Good afternoon and welcome to the December 2nd, 2025 meeting of the Chatham Select Board. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, including the use of AI note-taking apps, please notify the chair. Seeing none. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 28, 2025 signing of Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 20, until June 30, 2027, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, Xfinity Channel 1072, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. First order of business is to establish a quorum. Ms. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Dykens?
Present.
Mr. Metters?
Present.
Mr. Smith?
Present.
And the chair is present. Before we get to the business agenda, we will have first public announcements and agenda item requests. Are there any from the board? The chair will just announce that tomorrow at 6:30 in this room and also available online and by phone, we will have a special meeting of the Select Board to take up the recommendation and report of the Center for Active Living Working Group. So that will be at 6:30 tomorrow evening. Anyone in the audience with an agenda? Chief Anderson. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I come before you as not the Chief of Police, but a representative of the Chatham Police Association. Just to remind everybody, every year the association does a Toys for Tots toy drive. It's been very successful. Last year we donated 874 toys, and all of those go to Cape Cod families. None of those toys leave the Cape. We have a PD lobby drop box in case anybody's interested in dropping off a new and unwrapped toy. But I'm here to announce that we are having our annual Stuff a Cruiser drive this Saturday, December 6th, at the Ocean State Job Lot from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. I'd like to shout out to the Job Lot for the great partnerships that we have for them. In the past, we've been visited by Santa Claus. I can't guarantee that he'll be here this Saturday, but odds are in favor of that. So come down Saturday, the December 6th from 10 to 2 and meet some of the men and women of your police department, and please help out a good cause and bring us some toys. We'd like to shatter that record of 874. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Good luck. Anyone else in the audience? Dee Dee Holt.
Thank you. Good evening to the Select Board. I have an agenda request.
Yes.
I'm asking for an agenda item to address the specifics of the removal of a massive number of trees at the airport. It's my understanding the Airport Commission plans to remove trees from 60 acres of woodland surrounding the airport this January. This is not just about tree removal. This project will result in the complete destruction of acres of Chatham's diminishing wildlife habitat. There has been much interest in Chatham concerning airport activities. In the interest of clarity, accountability, and transparency, I think this project needs to be clarified in a public forum. I and others do not understand what exactly the Airport Commission intends to have done. For example, will the 60 acres be clear-cut, or will they be selectively removed and pruned, as I was once told? Is there an estimate of the number of trees to be taken, or an on-the-ground delineation of the subject area? Will there be a survey or an audit of the area to determine if wildlife is sheltering there, so appropriate care can be used? How will the contractors be monitored to ensure no unintended tree removals? What are the alternatives, if any? How will the airport mitigate the tremendous loss of biomass and habitat? The result of this project will be shocking, so these questions should be answered publicly. And let me add that there will be many more acres of woodlands cut for the 3 housing developments already in process. I hope you agree that this project needs to be better understood by you and the rest of the town, and that there will be accountability. So I ask you to add this subject to an agenda in the very near future. Time is important in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee Dee. Anyone else? Yes, Dr. Thompson.
Thank you, Dee Dee. I would just like to second that request very strongly. There's very strong arguments that I can give for why this should happen, and they're not related specifically to trees. They're more related to safety and the oxymoron of what's going on. But I do endorse this request for an agenda item. It is serious. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else here? I see no, Stephen Buckley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request an agenda item, but I had already sent in by email to the chair, but I thought it would be worth making it as a public announcement so that people could be prepared for when and if it does make it onto the agenda. And that has to do with a draft environmental impact statement that was released a couple of weeks ago on the Cape Cod Canal Bridges project. And this is the point at which the Federal Highway Administration is requesting comments on what it thinks will happen if it builds bigger and wider bridges to and from Cape Cod. And so I don't think, since this only happens like once every 100 years, we won't have a chance to say anything, well, even after it's built. So, yes, what the effect will be on Chatham and the people in Chatham of that, beyond clearing a traffic congestion, I think this is the time for some thought. The due date is January 5th, and it is in the main sheet newsletter put out by the town manager, but if you just Google Cape Cod Bridges Project, you'll find the website there, and then look for latest updates. Thank you very much.
Stephen, you and I have had some email correspondence on this. Are you requesting this as an agenda item? Do you want to come and make a presentation? I know that you were going to attend a state hearing on December 9th. Is that what you would like to do? Would you like to come and make a presentation about the January deadline and the EIR? Is that what you're asking?
Asking that it get on the agenda. There is a advisory group meeting of selected officials, mostly from Bourne. But I think that the town should, that's on December 9th. And if the town was to send somebody there, maybe from community development, that they could report back within, and it's a hybrid meeting, so they could still attend it, and then report on December 9th, meaning next Tuesday, about their sense of how to go about providing some comment. And I would expect that staff could draft up something, even if it was only a one-pager, without any concerns that we have.
Stephen, what I was suggesting was that, I don't know if anyone here is going to attend that December 9th meeting. We have a very long meeting of our own that evening. But if you're attending the December 9th meeting and you want to bring the board's attention to the January deadline for the feds, did you want to have an opportunity between December 9th and that January deadline to come before the board and talk about it? Is that's a suggestion I'm offering for you.
Or if they come before the board, well, I couldn't come before the board in time, but if there are general questions, perhaps you as the chair or the town manager or the town manager I could relay those questions. I will be attending that meeting. You don't have to be an official, but they don't like to publicize it either. But I could ask questions on behalf of the town and see what kind of response.
We'll follow up with you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. And as far as
thanks for letting me tell people what's going on so they can take their own, act on their own initiative as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. With respect to the prior requests from Dee Holt and Mike Thompson. I will confer with our liaison to the Airport Commission, and we'll decide what to do.
And if it helps move it along at all, I'd like to join them in that request. If it helps at all, I'd like to join them in that request.
Okay, yes, I received an email, I haven't had a chance to read it, it's fairly long, from Dr. Thompson just before the meeting, and we can share it. Thank you. Kathy, I think you had an announcement on behalf of the Harbor Master.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The fishing partnership will be offering a first aid and CPR hands-on training in Sandwich on December 8th. That's Monday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And it's a fisherman's first aid training. And while it's not an event here in Chatham, we know that fishermen from all over the Cape and South Shore will travel to this, and they provide breakfast and lunch and a custom first aid kit valued at $300. Free of charge for commercial fishermen. So we just wanted to let people know you do need to sign up with Julia Messersmith, and her email is online on the board right now as part of the fishingpartnership.org. And again, it's Monday, December 8th, 2025 from 8 to 4 p.m. at the Clark Hatted American Legion Post in Sandwich. And it is completely free to commercial fishermen.
So we have it shown on the slide. Did someone wish to speak on this? Is that what you're saying?
No, this was provided by the harbor master, who
Okay.
just asked me to announce it. We'll be putting it up on the social media sites
Okay.
and in the main sheet as well.
All right. Thank you. I guess that concludes this portion of the meeting. We'll go right into the consent agenda.
Dean,
Yes,
sorry.
Stuart, I'm sorry.
I had one agenda request.
Sure.
And I'm hoping that time permits to have this for next week. 2 weeks would be fine, but next week would be preferable regarding a select board holiday proposal for staff.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Thank you. We have a consent agenda that consists of 2 items. One, to consider requests for temporary closures of establishments holding an annual liquor license. And second is to consider annual liquor license renewals. The licensing agent has prepared the lists. We would take a vote on the consent agenda as a whole, unless somebody from the board wishes to remove an item for separate consideration. So I'll ask the board, what would you like to do?
I move to approve the consent agenda
Is there
as proposed in the memo.
is there a second?
There is, second.
Okay. I will call the roll. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay, so now we have the business agenda, public comments on the business agenda, which you could make now or later on during each of the separate items, which include salt marshes presentation, personal care sites, and emergency management, a successor employment agreement with the Director of Finance, and that's it. So, any public comments on the business agenda at this time? Hearing none, we'll go right into the first item on the business agenda, which is an update on the studies for preservation of Chatham salt marshes. This is requested by the Energy and Climate Action Committee on October 22nd, and I will turn to Greg Berman, who's going to introduce a member of the Climate Action Committee.
Great, thank you
Welcome.
very much. Greg Berman, your Director of Natural Resources, and with me is Jerry Stahl, a member of the Energy and Climate Action Committee. As you saw in your agenda report, this is a report out of what is now the first salt marsh study. The salt marsh study was supported in the May 2023 annual town meeting, and that has just wrapped up. It was performed by the Center for Coastal Studies. We have a additional 2025 town meeting for the rest of the salt marshes. So the first study that we have the report on was for those first 4 marshes. Now we're doing the rest of the marshes. And I'm just trying to look here. You know, we had some excellent results, and I think Jerry's going to share that with you. And once we wrap up this second study, that's when we get into the prioritization and management and adaptation methods that we might be able to use. So. I'll
Jer-
turn it over to Jerry.
Greg, before you introduce Jerry, is the second study, the one that's ongoing, is that also being done by the Center for Coastal Studies?
It is. The RFP and contracting just wrapped up a week or two ago.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. So the package for tonight's Select Board meeting contains Greg's quite comprehensive background description of this research. It describes the technical studies that were conducted by the consultant, the Center for Coastal Studies. It also details the funding source, which was the Community Preservation Act. Finally, it links to the technical report submitted by the consultant, as well as to a report to Chatham residents from the Energy and Climate Action Committee. And it's this last report which focuses on the issues of climate change, specifically as they apply to South and West Chatham, that I'm going to talk about. So if you download that report from the package, you'll have most of the images that are in my presentation. So here are the four marshes along the Nantucket Sound that were studied last year. And here are the main points of tonight's presentation. A, what are the facts about climate change, specifically for Chatham today, up to date? B, how much of Chatham's salt marsh is likely to be lost in the coming years? C, where could new salt marsh form in the coming years? D, what are the latest predictions for flooding and wave surge in South and West Chatham? And E, where are the biggest threats to neighborhoods by flooded roads in South and West Chatham? So we start with the primary indicator of future climate change, global warming, and sea level rise. That is the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. Despite all claims about reductions in carbon emissions, the basic fact is that the amount of carbon in the atmosphere is still increasing and even accelerating. Specifically, Barnstable County is experiencing warming temperatures even faster than the world in general, and that's predicted to continue and accelerate. Similarly, the sea level is rising faster around Cape Cod, even than most other places in the world. This is at Woods Hole, and this is at Boston, the closest sites to us. This is a century of measurements by NOAA at Woods Hole and in Boston. Unfortunately, the study that we had from adopted, dated, and overly conservative predictions of sea level rise from the United Nations report, but we can easily adapt the prediction years based on more realistic predictions from current local data. So in this chart, I've compared various predictions, including those the newly adopted Massachusetts Coastal Flood Risk Model, marked MCFRM, which we'll discuss later in the presentation. And I believe that the best predictions are those of MCFRM, which I've used in this report. So we turn now to the most important finding of the marsh study, the likely loss of 2/3 of the healthy marshes in South and West Chatham. This chart is directly from the CCS report. They figured out how much marsh would be drowned by sea level rise and how much land around the marshes would be suitable for the marsh to migrate to upland, taking into account sedimentation of sand and slope of land, which they measured very accurately. They could not take into account houses in private ownership. That's something that our committee, the town, and the residents will have to think about in the future. There are many threats, other threats to the marshes, and the study alerted us to the presence of purple marsh crabs, which can destroy marshes and have become a real problem on Cape Cod. Our committee is already and Greg and his people in the town are already working on this problem, but there's no clear solution to it at this point. Perhaps our most important finding from the study and the analysis by the consultants is the detailed prediction of possible future marsh migration, which will help us decide what to do about it. Here's the map by the consultants in red of migration areas possible in future target years, combined with Chatham's parcel maps of ownership of properties that are overlapping the possible migration areas. That's in South Chatham, and this is in West Chatham, the same kind of mapping. So you can see how many properties are affected or are blocking possible future marsh migration.
Jerry, can you please explain what you mean by migration and what its benefit is?
Yeah, so you can sort of see in this map that, so here's some marsh along here, the blue, and the blue over here. Our current marsh, and they're likely to be flooded, they're likely to be submerged as the sea level rises. There won't be any plants there, any salt marsh grasses. So it won't be a healthy marsh environment. But what the marsh tends to do is so-called migration upland, so that it moves up to higher levels right around the marsh. And that's what these, the different colors show where it's likely to be in different years, in 2050, 2070, and by 2100, the different shades of red. And what happens is that, well, as the sea level rises, the water goes higher on the land, and so it can support marsh grasses there.
You see.
But if there's a house there, then that's a problem. Or even if it's just private property and people put up some kind of fence or whatever to stop it. And basically, you can see from this map, just sort of eyeballing it, that a good deal of the potential place for marsh to move to is blocked right now by private property. So I think this is going to be an issue for the town in the coming years as sea level rises, as a lot of these homes start to get flooded. What are people going to do about it? They can't get insurance and so on. Maybe they can't still live there. Maybe the town wants to somehow take over the property or put it in the land trust. Some of these properties are already town-owned and some are already in the land trust, but most of them are not. There's a couple that don't have any houses on them, and this is the kind of analysis we can now start to do, given the predictions of where the marsh is likely to be able to move to. The whole theory of the study was to see how we can preserve the marshes. We know a lot of it may be flooded. Some things we may be able to do to stop the flooding, like add some sand carefully to raise the level of the marsh. That may or may not be possible in different places. There may be other solutions possible. But one possibility is just to clear the land, some land for the marsh to move to.
Thank you.
And that's what and they did a very thorough studies of elevation. They have very fine-grained elevations data now that we can use, which we didn't have before. They looked at the slope of the land because the marsh can't go up too high a slope. So they took that into account. They started to look at sedimentation. So some sand washes in and builds up the level of the ground. Some old marsh plants die and stay there and build up the level of the ground. So they've taken all those things into consideration and modeled it and so on. And so now we have that, which we can combine, like here, with our own information about properties and who lives where and so on. So yeah, so in those two maps we just saw for South and West Chatham, there were over 400 properties involved, and we have to look more carefully at each of those. Some have houses, some are undeveloped properties. As I say, some are owned publicly. So the next study, as Greg mentioned, is actually starting this month to look at the other 9 salt marshes with the same consultants to get the same kind of data for all of those. And then we have a picture of marshes throughout Chatham, all the major marshes, and the data that we need to do analysis and to be able to prioritize where we should talk about doing some interventions to help preserve the marshes. And here's some ideas for interventions. And it's going to have to be a combination of work between our committee and other committees and town staff and the people who live in the neighborhoods. So here's the 9 marshes. You see they cover altogether, including the 4 we've already looked at. They cover a good part of Chatham, sort of all the seaward areas. Okay, so now we're going to take a quick look at predictions for South and West Chatham from the Massachusetts Coastal Flood Risk Model, which is newly adopted by the state to study climate change throughout Massachusetts. So here's their predictions for a major flood in South and West Chatham, overlaid over the map of properties. The model that they use is, so previously we had FEMA maps, which looked very similar to this, but the FEMA map only looked back at historical floods, not taking into account future climate change. And it's what they call a bathtub model. It just looks at how high the water will be everywhere, like this might be 3 feet above current tides. But the new model is very probabilistic and takes into account climate change is going to change the kind of storms that come here, and they modeled thousands of possible storms, and this is the probabilistic model result that they came up with. And it's very detailed, so you can blow this up down to a couple feet and see exactly what's predicted to how deep the flood will be at a given point. And also they did the same kind of model for wave surges. Big waves coming in through storms come even higher than the flood, and this is how they might be distributed. this is a key thing where marshes are really important. If you have a marsh, if you live in one of these colored areas and you have a marsh in front of you, when the waves come and the storm comes, the marsh buffers you from it. It cuts down the wind and the waves, and it also draws the water away after a flood. If you don't have marshes there, if they're all dead, then you lose a major protection of homes along those areas. And there are quite a few of Chatham's homes are in those areas. One aspect of this is so-called low-lying roads, which may be the most critical thing for the town to think about starting right away, and they are working on it. So if you look at the roads coming in, the 3 roads that come into the major beaches along there are all going to be flooded by storms soon, and they will cut off access to all of those houses that are in those 3 colored areas. So Cockle Cove Road, when it closes down there from being flooded, it cuts off access to and from 97 homes, which means not only the residents can't get out of there and their homes may be flooded, but emergency vehicles can't get in there either. Ridgevale has even more, 122 homes cut off, and Harding's has incredible, over 400 homes would be isolated by a flood of Harding's Beach Road. And this just shows the properties in each of those neighborhoods. So imagine over 600 homes being evacuated from South and West Chatham when a big storm comes in. Where would all those people go? How would they be supported for however long the flooding lasts? And so on. Okay, so climate change and sea level rise pose difficult issues for Chatham, and our committee is trying to collect accurate and critical data to help everyone understand the challenges and to explore responses. Any questions or?
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Shireen?
Jerry, thank you very much for the report. It's really informative and a little ominous, I'd have to say. Just want to comment that those latter predictions were in the year 2070. Was that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
One of the things there's a couple of things, just an observation. I think the last big tides we had, Oyster River Marsh was totally flooded in a way that people were sending my family pictures just to show us, simply because we've never seen it like that. So, I mean, the occurrence of flooding in that area is getting more and more dire. So the next steps are to do the other 9 salt marshes in the community, and then to start to think about a management plan that includes mitigation in some capacity. Is that the next recommendation that ECAC would bring before the board?
Yeah, I think the idea is, for instance, low-lying roads. I showed 3 of them. There are others around Chatham, and there was a little study done by Cape Cod Commission, I think.
Yep.
I didn't think much of their study. It didn't really look at, it wasn't tuned to Chatham at all. It was really tuned to a place like Sandwich, which had a lot of businesses that could be flooded, and so a different structure totally to the road system and housing and so on. So that's why I'm trying to develop these maps of the flooding related to the housing there. And when we have them for the whole, almost all the low-lying roads are in marsh areas in the floodplain. So when we'll have a pretty comprehensive view of them after the next study, and then we could prioritize which ones to do something about. Each road, I think the commission came up with a price tag of around $1 million per road minimum. So it's fairly expensive to do that kind of mitigation. But you see, there could be hundreds of houses affected. And so where are the town's priorities in something like that?
Tell me about the purple crab. It's invasive, obviously.
Yeah.
And, I mean, what does it do to a salt marsh that it's detrimental to a salt marsh in general?
Actually, this shows what it did by Harding's Beach.
Okay, I get it,
So,
yep.
Greg and I went out with somebody from an expert about these crabs who's been dealing with them at the National Seashore, where they've been a real problem. And we walked, and that's where I took this picture. So what they do, especially near the ditches, is they burrow and they eat the roots, especially of the vegetation, of the salt marsh grasses. Other crabs don't eat the grasses, but these crabs eat the grasses and kill them, and then nothing grows there. And you have these mud flats here, which will eventually be flooded with no grass, or eroded away with no grass to hold them in place.
Do you know if they're edible?
I've asked a number of people, and nobody's tasted them.
Okay.
They're also nocturnal, which makes them hard to find. They burrow under. We did find a couple of them when we went out during the day. There's no known solution to them. They used to be controlled by predators, especially fish.
So fish are the predators?
Certain fish, and apparently there's not as many fish around as there used to be.
Not in Nantucket Sound because of the seals, so. Okay, thank you. I appreciate the work that your committee's doing, and the report is really, really interesting. And thank you so much. Continue up the good work.
Jeff?
Thank you, Jerry. Great report. I look forward to kind of downloading and studying those maps a little bit more closely. It's a little difficult to understand what's going on, but I think you guys are hitting all the high points. And I was very interested in Shireen's question on, after we map the next 9 marshes, what are the next, when would the town and the select board and folks receive recommendations on actual action plans for amelioration or for assistance to preserve our marshes? It seems like a big order for me, but it's a very important one. So
Yeah, it's hard to answer because we don't know what this study's going to find. That's why we're doing the study. Like these crabs, they came out of the blue, the purple.
Yeah.
And, we were not expecting them. The consultant was not expecting to find them. They sort of just tripped over them. And so we'll be looking more carefully at the other 9 marshes to see if where there were certainly a lot of them at Harding's when we just walked out there. So in some sense, we don't know even what kind of recommendations might be made. The other thing is that Greg works very closely with the committee. So, for instance, the crab thing came up, and we didn't have to, come make an agenda item here and come and present and have you vote on something. He just went out and got this expert from the National Seashore and some other people and started looking into it right away. So we have a good working relationship already with staff. So some of it gets taken care of that way.
So is it fair to say that we have at least a baseline, if you will, on the four marshes that have been studied thus far, and then we will also have a baseline for the next 9 marshes that you guys we're going to.
Exactly, yeah. Baseline data is the way I look at a lot of it.
Yeah.
Like,
I just have a question about, and I understand the prioritization of the marshes that are closest to low-lying roads and properties, et cetera, developed properties, but how about I think one of the most beautiful and large marsh in Chatham, which is up the stage, not Stage Island, but Pleasant Bay. I think baseline ought to be studied there as well. Because it's right in the middle of Pleasant Bay, and it's impacted by the Atlantic rushing in and out all the time with high tide. So I think.
Yeah, Pleasant Bay, of course, has the Pleasant Bay Alliance, which Chatham is part of, that does a lot, has already done a lot of these studies.
I misspoke. It's Strong Island, obviously, but I would hope that we get baseline data there as well, because I think it's probably fairly indicative of climate change and sea level rise. But I don't know if the Pleasant Bay Alliance is doing it or not. Maybe Greg does, but I'm not familiar. It's just a beautiful marsh. It's gigantic.
Yeah, no, truly beautiful. So our marsh studies are actually somewhat modeled off of the Pleasant Bay Alliance's studies that were done throughout those marshes. So we didn't want to duplicate anything that was already done, but Strong Island was included in that Pleasant Bay Alliance work. We have partnered with the Pleasant Bay Alliance on a variety of things. That's one thing where they, took this data from the marshes, and eventually, once you get all the marshes involved, you start doing prioritization, finding out which marshes can be, have opportunity for adaptation, and which marshes are doing just fine, and which marshes really have no ability to migrate at that point and might need to be just observed. But, that's our next step after getting all these, and the consultants are going to be providing us with these recommendations and adaptation methodologies. When we were out looking at those purple marsh crabs, one of the very few things that Stephen Spear from the Park Service was talking about was placement of sand over top of the burrows will displace those crabs. So, kind of the dual benefit of thin layer deposition along with crab, prevention. But there's also, is it actually, it's not killing the crabs, it's just pushing them off to the side. So more work has to be done. We don't want to push them somewhere else by accident.
Right.
So we're proceeding, but cautiously.
Thank you, Greg. That's very helpful. And just not to overstate the obvious, but I have deep concern about the causeway and the Little Beach area, and you talk about low-lying road. Hopefully that's part of the study going forward.
Yeah, and I can follow up with that for just a second if you want. So, the low-lying road project from the Cape Cod Mission, focused on that Morris Island Road a bit and the tide gate. We then did a follow-up request for a municipal vulnerability preparedness grant, which was not awarded. Since then, we've identified and allocated town funding to do that study and research, looking at the tide gate and Morris Island Road adaptation alternatives. So that is a contract that's in place now, and we start expecting results, and we will bring them to you when we have them. Another the low-lying road was up off of Crow's Pond, and that was another one that we applied for a grant with the Pleasant Bay Alliance to take a look at that one that wasn't funded. So, even these things that aren't funded, we're trying to find ways to keep things moving.
Super, very helpful. Thanks, Greg.
Corey?
Thanks, Jerry.
Jerry, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation. Would it be safe to say, too, that the work on the marshes is also very hand-in-hand with beach nourishment? Because, when you showed like the Hardings Beach, Ridgeville, Cockle Cove Forest, that stretch, that beach has changed drastically. From when I was a little kid to where it is now, and all the beaches being blown away, and it's starting to creep into the marsh. Over between Cockle Cove parking lot specifically to where the retaining wall is, that is dropped back considerably, and it's creeping up on that marshland behind the Chat Harbor Lane area. And then you go further down, that barrier beach is kind of getting beat up pretty darn well. We got to keep our focus too on some beach nourishment, because if we don't, it's just going to accelerate. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And just to follow up with that one, that's literally another grant that we applied for. That one was not funded either. But we have, identified some funding through the Mill Creek Jetty work that's going to look at depositing that sand and working with Cockle Cove and Bucks Creek and an analysis of the Nantucket Sound shoreline sediment budget. One, to make sure that our dunes are in place to be able to protect the natural resources like the marshes, but two, that, you know, the sediment's not making its way into our estuaries, or if it is, what needs to be done, whether it's a regular dredging regimen or whether, you know, we're putting too much or not enough down in the right time. So that's going to be the results of that study when it comes out.
Any other comments or questions from the board or the public? Well, thank you very much, and thanks to the committee. I'm sorry.
There's
on?
one question.
Oh, Brian Phillips, sorry.
For the record, Brian Phillips, 374 Orleans Road. I guess my question is, how does building, non-permeable surfaces, houses and pools in flood zones or coastal conservancy districts affect kind of that information you just presented, like the flood patterns or the ability of the salt marshes to migrate properly, and kind of anything else it would have to do with that type of stuff? Thank you.
Well, obviously, they would get in the way of a marsh, and we do have the wetlands laws that protect a lot of property from new construction like that would be in the way of the wetlands. But that's something we have to look at more closely, is where in some of these maps, where there are obstructions to the marsh moving, impermeable, as you say.
And just on a lighter note, after talking about all the grants we didn't get, one of the grants that we did get was a SNEP Technical Assistance Grant that looks at the coastal resilience zone, if you will. So that's the floodplain as it's impacted by sea level rise. And the Cape Cod Commission is going to be working with us to provide extensive outreach and stakeholder input to see, what regulatory changes may help, what impacts it would have to the town, how it would in fact impact private property. So that's kind of coming along the way.
Well, again, thank you both for this really very helpful and informative report. I think the board, I think I speak for the entire board in saying that when the rest of the study is completed, the other 9 marshes, perhaps we would look to the Energy and Climate Action Committee, and maybe you could collaborate with some other committees, as you mentioned earlier, like Open Space or Conservation, and maybe even the Planning Board, and come forward to the Select Board with a set of recommendations for mitigation and control of these issues, and as well as staff continuing to try to get more grant monies for us. But thank you. This is really very, very informative. I hope people paid attention to it. Thank you. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Greg. The next item on the agenda is a continuation of something that was taken up in August at the request of Select Board members Smith and resident Lane Gibbs on personal care sites and emergency management planning. We do have a memo in the packet by the fire chief, Justin Tavano, and I'm going to ask him to kind of give us some highlights. I know we received an email from Ms. Gibbs, which we will read shortly, but turn it to you. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Fire Chief Justin Tavano. As the chair indicated, this is a continuation of discussion on personal care sites and sheltering from August. I'm just going to highlight, I don't have any slides to present, just going to highlight some of the more salient points from the memo that I wanted to point out, and then available for questions. The town of Chatham has emergency management plans which have been vetted by MEMA and are reviewed on an ongoing basis. Regarding forecast severe weather events, our emergency management team begins incident-specific planning several days in advance with our internal partners locally, internal departments throughout the town, regionally with our county partners, at the state level with MEMA, and with our private utility partners. One of the primary focus areas during these planning meetings is sheltering. Chatham's emergency management plans identify two distinct types of refuge, personal care sites, and overnight shelters. Personal care sites are meant to be temporary. They are open for specific hours to provide the public with temporary access to climate-controlled environments and emergency power to charge medical and communications devices. When Chatham formally stands up a personal care site, the primary facility is designated as the community center. Overnight shelters require medical and security personnel on site, sleeping accommodations, pet accommodations, showers, and kitchen facilities. Chatham, along with other municipalities across the county, and in line with the best practices identified by MEMA, has adopted a regional shelter approach for overnight sheltering. The primary regional overnight shelter for Chatham is located at the Cape Cod Technical High School in Harwich. The decisions to open personal care sites and/or overnight shelters may be made proactively or reactively and can depend on the confidence level of a weather forecast or real-time community need. For example, there are times when community need is low and services can more effectively and efficiently be provided to residents in need by bringing them to a public safety facility which is open and monitored around the clock. As community needs increase, it may be determined that a dedicated personal care site is required to meet those needs. Local information is then shared with our county partners to determine the need for overnight sheltering. I cannot stress enough that if at any time a resident is experiencing an emergency or feels unsafe in their home, or if they're aware of a friend or family member or a neighbor who's in need of assistance, it's critical that they notify public safety by calling 911. It's also important to remind residents to take proactive steps well in advance of severe weather by maintaining an emergency supply kit, having a plan, and staying informed. Keep your communications devices charged and only use them for emergencies if power goes out. Sign up for emergency notifications from the town through the town's website. Sign up to receive emergency notifications from private utility providers. Report utility disruptions to the utility providers, and sign up to participate in the town's other services, including the reassurance program and the special assistance list, which will ensure that someone from public safety comes to check on you if contact cannot be made. In closing, it's my recommendation that Chatham maintains the capability to open emergency personal care sites locally for short-term community needs, and for larger or prolonged events requiring overnight accommodations, the town should continue to collaborate with regional partners to activate the regional sheltering plan, which offers the most effective, sustainable, and safe means of providing comprehensive emergency overnight sheltering services. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I should also mention that we have present your Deputy Emergency Management Director as well. Any questions or comments to the Chief from the board? Stuart, need to put on your...
Thank you. We've chatted about this for some time. One of my concerns is that the town of Chatham, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't control the opening or closing of the regional shelters. That's done by help me out, it's some sort of a committee.
The Barnstable Regional Emergency Planning Committee, correct.
Which is, how is that run?
So that's run through Barnstable County Emergency Management. Chip Riley's the coordinator up there. So they also run the Multi-Agency Coordination Center. So they kind of have morphed and spearhead all these kind of planning and strategy sessions in advance of an event. They bring all the different municipal partners into play, the utility providers, everybody who's kind of a stakeholder. If we were to get a forecast severe weather, a blizzard or a hurricane, major tropical storm, things of that nature. And they go around the room in these meetings, they talk about community need, perceived need or actual need, and that it drives kind of their decisions. So if there were, if we had 100% confidence we were gonna get hit with a blizzard, the decision is usually made to proactively open up the regional shelter so that they can safely get people there in advance of the storm.
So that committee is made up of
Representatives from all
area
the,
communities, fire,
all
police.
all the communities across the county.
See, I think that that's problematic. I can see the wisdom in having regional shelters. It's more efficient. And we have to, we can collectively staff those shelters perhaps more effectively. But having seen that system fail, I think it's important to have an alternative as to what's going to take place when the county, for whatever the reasons, they're looking at 150,000 people. So for whatever reason decides that they're not going to do something that Chatham would like done during an emergency. And like so many other emergencies that we've faced in the past, the best laid plans, can falter. And I've seen them falter. I've seen, a lot of promises from federal and state county organizations that are, good as armchair sailors now, but when they hit the pavement, they begin to disintegrate. And those are the things that I'm concerned about because I've seen it. And an alternative to those regional shelters, when that fails, because it did and it will in the future, hopefully not often, and maybe we don't have to stand up this alternative, but I think having that alternative plan B is an important part of an emergency plan. And I'd encourage, I guess I can make a motion to that effect that, but before I get to that, what are your thoughts on having an alternative?
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. Part of what we do is we try not to just rely on Plan A. We try to have contingency plans. Deputy Director and I review the plans throughout the year. We usually one season ahead, we're looking at winter storms while it's still summertime and vice versa. And we brainstorm, what are we going to do if? And then if that fails, what do we do if? So, it is part of our conversations, it's part of our discussions, it's part of our tabletop exercises, which we have one planned in the near future, to kind of work through some of these challenges that might arise. So, while I don't have a specific Plan B for you here to present tonight, it is part of our ongoing conversations, looking at different facilities throughout the town that we could put people in if we needed to, and where we're going to get those resources and equipment.
And the second part of my comment is relating to the warming centers, because they're two different issues, really. And we have, we built the community center. Part of the rationale, I can remember it being presented at town meeting was, well, we're going to use it for sheltering. Well, that didn't happen for a number of probably good reasons, but nonetheless, and we were going to build a COA building in West Chatham, and part of the argument was we were going to use it as a shelter, and we were going to put a generator there, and whether it was part of the sales pitch or not, I don't know how serious that discussion was as to warming center or shelters, but it was there, it was made. But we don't seem to follow through with that. So we've put a generator at the community center, which I think I supported. That was very positive. But other than what's contained in your conclusion, I think it's important that we have more of a reassurance to the community, and that we are actually, going to open that for not sheltering, because it's clearly not prepared for that, unfortunately, but for a warming center based on a certain criteria of contingencies. You certainly allude to that you're going to make that happen, and I appreciate that, but you folks are all busy. It's a busy time, and I think it would behoove, we don't want people coming back later and saying, told you so. It would be nice to move forward with a plan for the community center, and I see you reference I'm assuming it's the police and fire stations for some alternative small groups, warming, charging center. That's positive. But I think the utilization of that community center is going to be important. It's going to be important to develop a plan on how to staff that. The police and fire folks, DPW folks, some of the other smaller departments, they typically come together during those emergencies and make things happen. And the warming, sheltering issue is kind of a, red-haired stepchild. We haven't really fully addressed how we're going to staff that. And aside from police and fire, I'm less concerned about that because you folks have you have a regiment that you go through to respond just under normal conditions to issues at the community center or elsewhere. So I'm not worried about, I'm not even sure it's necessary to staff it with police and fire, frankly. I mean, the people who are staffing it should be minimally trained in first aid and CPR, and so they can address a lot of the issues, and they call, if necessary, for a ambulance or a police officer for some other issue. But I think we're selling ourselves short if we do not have an alternative plan to make that happen. And I see, you make strides to assure that we're going to make it work. And I just think it would be further reassuring if we were to have an alternate plan. And when appropriate, I'll make a motion to that effect.
Thank you. Corey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, Justin, thank you very much. I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from with, we've been going around this question quite a long time. The community building as a warming center, charging center, it's good and it's bad. I mean, honestly, when you walk in the lobby, we get the set of stairs going up to that second level, so there has some deficiencies for a larger volume of bodies. You got the gymnasium or the auditorium, whatever you want to refer to it as. So it does serve a meaningful purpose. But having more tools in our toolbox would be a nice thing. For whatever it's worth, I'm going to throw my 2 cents worth in. I think maybe it may be beneficial to have the conversation with the school. I think, honestly, the ideal facility is the middle school on Crow Road. You've got a facility that obviously younger kids, if it's an emergency, they're comfortable with. You have a facility with showers. You have a facility with a kitchen. You have 2 gymnasiums. One could be dedicated for pets, so you separate it from everyone else. It's a school, so you have locking doors and it could be secured in a pretty thorough manner. You have access points from the perimeter for buses or whatever else. So it may be at some point in time worth just having a conversation with the school that could be a plan B under the right circumstances for a local shelter, if that is something the community wants. It seems to be the perfect answer, structurally at least.
Yeah, and if I may, Corey, I have had conversations about the schools with the superintendent over the span of the last 6 years. We've looked at the schools, we've looked at the facilities, we've done assessments on them with reps from MEMA and the Red Cross. I've had ongoing conversations with the superintendent, just as recently as the immigrant issue over on the Vineyard a couple years ago, just looking at different sheltering options we might have. So, I agree with you. The school is, if we were looking at a plan B, the middle school is the ideal location. A lot of the different facilities have their own varying challenges. So the one at the middle school is that there's no full building generator there either. So if it's extremely cold or extremely hot, there's no way to control the environment. So that's kind of the big challenge over there. The generator there runs emergency power, emergency lighting, emergency power, some of the outlets, and runs the boiler for the hot water. So it kind of creates some unintentional radiant heat from the hot water flowing through the building, but the blowers don't work on the generator there.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions or comments from the board, I'm going to ask Kathy to read an email we received from Elaine Gibbs, because Elaine was one of the initiators of this agenda item initially. And then I'm going to ask the police chief if he has any comments, and then we'll open it up to further public comments. So Kathy, we got an email just before the meeting. I really haven't had a chance to read it carefully. Would you please read it from Elaine Gibbs?
Certainly. I am requesting again that the Select Board be able to vote to declare a local state of emergency with advance notice to the public that the community center will keep the door unlocked overnight when all power is lost, including cell phone service, making calling 911 possible or impossible. It will allow people to come in for a few hours to warm up and charge cell phones. They do not want to leave their homes overnight in the event they need to clear fallen trees at daylight. Regional shelters may not even open if they don't have staff, or we are the only area affected, and we won't know it until it's too late, as they don't make that call until 4 p.m. before or during a storm. It has happened before. You can have anyone that enters sign a waiver of legal liability. The link to CERT for the regional shelters on the town website is blank, saying it's in progress of being developed. It should not be on December 2nd. There is no page on the town website when you click Public Safety about our local emergency management team, only links to the American Red Cross and outage maps, etc. I disagree that it is ultimately personal accountability and responsibility of residents to, quote, take care of friends, neighbors, and family, end quote, and not local government. Many don't have them in the winter or may not have cell service. Public safety is your first and foremost responsibility. This current plan is an absolute abdication of that government responsibility when the solution is so obvious. One death will be too much. Elaine Gibbs.
Thank you. Elaine explained that she was on the road and wasn't sure if she was going to get to the meeting. Chief Anderson, do you have any comments on this? Because your department is mentioned in the fire chief's memo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to date myself. Back in 2006, I was promoted to lieutenant, and I was introduced to the command staff of the department. Since then, I've worked with 3 former and 1 current fire chief. During that time, I've seen the evolution of the sheltering pendulum swing in many directions. There's no perfect solution to this problem, but the current plan that is in place with the fire chief and emergency management, shockingly or not surprisingly, I support. And I am happy with the police department's role in that plan. I'm comfortable with it. If things change, the police department can adapt. We will, and we do. But just to further go into what was mentioned about my building used as a small temporary warming or cooling station does not have any of the challenges that, some of these other locations like the community center has. I mean, you might have to say that to people at the community center, hey, we're closing, you need to go someplace else. We're staffed in our lobby. We've got restrooms, we've got heat, we've got water. But again, we're not the solution. We're a Band-Aid. And just, if I could just add one more thing, what the fire chief said. This plan might not, apply to everybody, but even if it applies to a few people, if you feel that this plan falls short of your expectations and you're in distress or you're in crisis or you have an emergency, just call us and we'll come to you individually and we will address it and do the best we can to mitigate your problem. So,
Would you also explain, or either of you, what happens when the person can't call because their phone is down? You have checks, don't you? You check on folks that have.
Well, the first thing I would say is, it's really easy for public safety to say, make a kit. there's options to charge your phone. I mean, anybody can buy a separate charging battery. You can use your vehicle. But, I'm sorry, what was the question?
Well, I think you have reassurance programs where you
Sure.
you do checks on people, and if they don't
Yeah,
respond.
Currently, we have, I think, at the highest in the summer, we have about 75 residents that are on the reassurance program. And again, if the public wants information about the reassurance program, it's on the town website underneath the police department. And in short, basically means, if you're on the program, you call the police station every day, in a certain time. If we do not hear from you, we will try to contact you by phone. If we do not get an answer, we will visit your home, and you usually give us authority or permission to gain access to your home to make sure you're okay. And the system works. There's usually 2, 3, or 4 saves a year where we have a resident that is in crisis or has fallen, that we've been able to save, that otherwise would go, that call would not be able to be made. In addition to that, we have what's called the Special Assistance Program, which might not be applying to the reassurance, which is really targeted at our seniors. But we have people on our special assistance list that might have mobility problems, vision problems, hearing problems, might require mechanical assistance with oxygen or some type of other medical equipment where power outages could be pretty severe to that. And when certain conditions dictate, we will reach out to the people, in addition to the reassurance, we reach out to the people on our special assistance. And the same thing, they fill out the required forms and authorizations for us to, next of kin or family members or neighbors, access to their residence and who to notify in case of emergency. So if anybody out in Chatham is not on this, I encourage you to look at those 2 options. Not a lot of towns have the reassurance, and I know not a lot of towns have the special assistance program. And that special assistance program, both programs are maintained, updated, checked on a regular basis.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just add on to that a little bit too. The special assistance list, one of the things that we do in our emergency planning when there's a severe weather forecast is Leah Lacrosse has done it, or our other partners over at the CFAL. They actually make phone calls in advance to those people, make sure that they know about the storm that's on the way, make sure they have the supplies, adequate supplies that they need in the short term, and see if they need any immediate assistance. So that also helps kind of drive our decisions locally about, do we need to have a personal care site open, or do we need to get in touch with the county about opening an overnight shelter?
Thank you. I would just observe that your recommendation, Chief Devano, is consistent with what you've said in the past and what your predecessor, Chief DePasquale, said on occasion to us as well. I'm going to throw it open to public comment if there is any here in person or online. And I don't see any, so I'm going to bring it back to the board for any further discussion or motions or whatever. So, who
Sure.
wants to go?
I appreciate everybody's patience and response. I think the chief's memo is touches most of the bases, but having seen these things fail, we need a plan. And I'd make a motion that we ask the town manager to, with her staff, to develop a alternative to the regional sheltering plan in the eventuality that that regional sheltering plan fails to open or fails to meet the needs of our constituency here. And that's my first motion.
Is there a second?
A second for discussion, though.
Okay.
So,
All right, so we've got a second. So we'll open it to a discussion on the motion.
so with, the chief has confirmed that they have looked at other facilities, buildings, whatever, and they seem to be shortfalls with each of them. So I guess coming up with no problem coming up with a plan B. More tools in the toolbox, wonderful idea, great. But if we have, whether it be the school, whether it be another town facility. I'm guessing we're gonna need either another generator, another element to the facility to meet certain accommodations, so it's not just identifying another facility, there's gonna be probably a capital cost of, again, my thought is this middle school. Middle school's at, one of the hurdles is the generator and having a proper heating, cooling elements to that. So it's a little bit bigger than just identifying Plan B, but I think having that discussion and working on it, I'm fine with. But I think it's a little bit more involved than just a simple.
Good point. My motion was deliberately broad in that it's, I'm putting it back onto the operational folks to develop whatever plan that they, whether it be the elementary school, the community center, and there may or may not be, but there may be cost involved in that, but we won't know any of that until we get whatever proposal comes back for mind you, for the sheltering issue, this is simply an alternative when the regional sheltering system fails, Chatham.
Jeff, we're still talking about Stuart's motion and then Shereen.
So we're going to have a duplicative shelter should there be a severe weather event, is what you're saying, because you're anticipating, or what? You're anticipating that we'll be not able to use the regional shelter, which is only down 137.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that would be a very severe event. You're talking about a massive hurricane or a blizzard, but the shelter would already be open to take care of a massive,
Right.
really untoward weather event where one might lose cell phone capability. But we're duplicating what already exists.
We're not. So, and let me
How so?
explain.
How
Let me
so?
explain. So, before I retired, we had a blizzard. The regional sheltering system failed. We needed a regional shelter. Harwich was unable to open. I think they were doing renovations. And my recollection is the alternative to that was Eastham, and the heating system failed in Eastham. So those two alternatives were not viable alternatives for that eventuality. This plan may never have to be implemented, but it doesn't hurt to have one. So I don't see it as a duplication. I see it as when those issues fail, because they have, let's have a plan.
So, and the shelter would include cots, bedding, care for children and pets?
It would include whatever the town manager and her staff come up with.
Well, that's what the shelter's capable of doing, the regional shelter.
And it may or may not, maybe during this study, let's say, this contingency plan, they realize that there's some aspects of a shelter that they're just not able to provide. Maybe it's phased. Hey, we can do this now, and when we do some improvements that I think are anticipated for the elementary school, we may be able to do some further refinements to the plan. But this seems like a prudent measure to simply address something that has taken place.
I'd like to know how many other towns in the Cape have a secondary shelter, whether we'd be the outlier or having a shelter that we, as Stuart mentioned earlier, are in control of, whether it's the community center, the middle school, the police department, wherever. Anybody else do this?
Not that I know of. The host towns have the luxury of having the regional shelter within their town, so they have those facilities. But we're still all part of the regional plan.
Yeah, and were we around, or was I around even, or the chiefs or our town manager around when the regional center that Stuart refers to, I believe it was Harwich at the time, is what you're saying?
It was first Harwich, the alternative was Eastham, and it was 2 years prior to my retirement, so it was recent.
So it failed miserably, we couldn't, it was opened?
Cape Tech was not, the construction hadn't finished yet.
Hadn't finished
So
yet.
Nauset High School was the shelter at the time for the region. That was the storm that, for some reason, generators were failing everywhere. Our generator failed in the fire station. Eastham Police and Fire, their generator failed. And then they had a generator failure up there at the site as well. It was after it had already been stood up and people had checked in. So they did have to move on to their contingency plan, which was then going to be moving those people to Barnstable High School.
And now that the regional tech is open, have we done drills over there? Have we tested have we done tabletop exercises with all the folks, police, fire, and the surrounding towns, and with the school itself?
Yes, I've been over there several times with members of the CERT team and the county and our other municipal partners.
Would one say that that NOSIP, because it wasn't open, is an anomaly rather than, it's an anomaly?
Yeah, I mean, it was open. They had to move towards closure because of the generator failure after they had opened.
Got it, okay.
Shireen?
So a couple of things that I'm wondering about is, my notes say that you have alternative and contingency plans that you set up as a Plan B already in place. The other point is that from the perspective of the Cape Cod Technical Regional School, it's a brand-new facility now. It is probably equal distance to some residents in Chatham as would be the community center. So I'm pretty sure, there's a good portion of the population of Chatham. It's closer. I know it is to folks in River Bay where I reside. It's closer to go to 137 than it is to go downtown. So it is a viable alternative to anything. The idea of putting together or expanding on your alternative plans or contingency plans, I mean, I would have to say we'd have to see what the cost associated with something like that would be. And if this is just an expansion of the tabletop exercises, I don't see that that's a big deal. But I'm concerned about the redundancy, as you had said, Jeff, that we're duplicating effort.
Yeah, and I want to be fully transparent. So, in our formal plans, we've adopted the regional shelter plan. As far as contingencies, those are the result of different brainstorming and tabletop type exercises. We don't have those contingencies formally built into our black and white on paper plans.
So the county emergency planning people, I mean, that is made up of you, the committees or that planning group is made up of emergency service representatives from all the towns.
Correct.
I'm assuming, correct? And if we were to adopt a standalone emergency shelter plan, would that jeopardize our relationship with planning, for storms and emergencies? Would it be by default that it would just say, Chatham, you're on your own, you have this plan in place, and...
No, it wouldn't jeopardize that, but as far as staffing that local overnight shelter, we would be on our own. We wouldn't get the volunteers.
The
and the staffing
volunteer
that
committee.
would be.
That's the other piece to that is the staffing. How do you go? I mean, that would be. I guess I'd be curious about how are you staffing? It's just not going to be volunteers that know a little bit of CPR. I mean, there's a lot to it, I guess. With the CERT volunteers that they go through considerable training to be part of that.
Stuart, then Corey, and then I want to talk. Stuart.
Redundancy in the emergency business is critical. So if we're going to coin this as redundant, absolutely. That is exactly its intent. The other thing I want to mention is the chief's correct. In that blizzard, a lot of natural gas generators failed. It was, in that respect, somewhat of a perfect storm. But it did happen. And coming up with alternatives was a challenge for some of the public safety facilities. It is the precise reason why the town, because I was part of those discussions, and I advocated for a diesel-fired generator at the community center, specifically to avert and have an alternative to that type of event, which will run much more effectively in that type of weather. So that's exactly why we chose that type of generator for that eventuality.
Okay. Corey?
No, I'm looking at this not redundancy. I'm looking at we have a plan in place that is endorsed by both chiefs. we're very comfortable with what we have in place. There are some people that are very concerned about it, and concern is not a bad thing. You know, you have concerns, we want to improve things. But we have a plan that we feel comfortable moving forward with. But I don't find anything wrong with doing some due diligence and having identified another facility, figuring out under the right conditions that we would maybe have to implement it. You know, what is it going to cost to, you know, capital costs to bring it up to whatever standards are? The voters would have to weigh in on that. If they don't support that kind of project, they're not going to vote for it. But there are other logistics about staffing these facilities. So once we identify where it is, there's a lot of logistics of, you know, if you're going to do this, this is what it takes to pull it off. And I think that would drive exactly when and if it ever were to be implemented as a Plan B. We have a Plan A in place, and we hope that always stays true. But there's no harm in having that extra layer of protection that, all right, we've identified a location, the building is now equipped with X, Y, and Z, so if we absolutely had to implement it, this is what we would need to do, this is how we need to staff it. This is, hopefully, these conditions are not something we do on a regular basis, but to have more options for us, doing due diligence is not a bad thing. It's not, I don't see it as we're opening that location and the regional shelter. This is something we have in our master plan that if we needed to implement it, we have it available, or we have a plan available to execute it in the event it needs to be executed. That's how I'm looking at this.
Thank you. Well, I like the fire chief's recommendation, and it's not just his recommendation, it's also supported by the police chief. And I believe we should take the advice of our paid professionals. It was also the recommendation of Chief Devano's predecessor, because we had this discussion multiple times. And I think it's understood in that recommendation and from the chief's presentation that the Emergency Management Department or division is always undergoing continuous evaluation, improvement, and adjustment of the plan. And I think that phase or aspect could incorporate some of the things that Mr. Metters has been talking about. With respect to what you would have in a local shelter, it's been pointed out to us by the fire chiefs that best practices, whether they're dictated or directed or simply advised by emergency management professionals, specify a number of things that we should have in these shelters that are going to cost money, including staffing. And I just don't think it's something that we need to do. And so I'm not going to support the motion. I understand, Stuart, where you're coming from. I just think we have a good plan in place, and we should listen to our public safety professionals. So unless there's any further discussion, I'm going to call the roll on the motion. Okay. Ms. Davis?
No.
Mr. Dykens?
No.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
And the chair votes no. Are there any other motions?
I was going to, but I don't think it'll be supported, given the fact that you didn't support the first one. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other motions? Well, I'm going to offer a motion that the board endorse the fire chief's recommendation, and I'll read it. Chatham should maintain the capability to open emergency personal care sites locally for short-term community needs. For larger or prolonged events requiring overnight accommodations, the town should collaborate with regional partners to activate the regional sheltering plan. The town should continue public education and information efforts to ensure residents understand the difference between a personal care site and a regional shelter. That's my motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, I'll call the roll. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
I'll abstain.
And the chair votes aye. So that's 4-0-1. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
All right.
Thank you, Chief
Have a good night.
Anderson. Thank you, Deputy Chief Heller. The next item is to consider the approval of a successor employment agreement with Director of Finance Carrie Mazzarell, dated July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2029. This is the second of 3 personal employment agreements with department heads, and I'll turn to our town manager for a presentation on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have our Director of Finance, Carrie Mazzarell, who is going into her 3rd year with a contract expiring on June 30th, 2026, and that would be fiscal year 2027. So before you is a successor agreement that we had discussed, some refinements to take out specific references to the first agreement, but also provide for compensation at a total of a 4.5% increase per year for the 3 years. And that includes cost of living, traditional step increases. It's all in for that. And then it also has an item where she can cash out up to 5 days of vacation leave not taken. And the last item is to provide an extra week of vacation for her use, considering her years of service in her career. So before you is the draft successor agreement. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer. Director Mazzarell is also here to answer, and I respectfully request that the Select Board approve the successor agreement.
Thank you, Jill. I just had 2 questions. I really didn't have a chance to touch base with you about them beforehand. On page 2 of the contract, up at the top, the 3rd line down, there's a reference to, it's the last sentence, the first review of performance shall be done within 90 days. Is that still relevant to this agreement?
No, so it's done on an annual basis, so thank you for
could
catching
take
that.
that
That's a remnant from the first agreement.
And then on page 3, right at the bottom, it refers to longevity. Is this different from the annual step increases longevity?
It is, so this would, I don't have the personnel policies in front of me, but this would kick in after a certain year of service, and that was also in the previous Director of Finance contract.
So the annual step increases are not included in this contract. That's expressly stated.
Exactly.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments to Jill Stewart?
I guess first I'll, and then I just had a couple rudimentary questions, but first I'll, I guess it's appropriate to make a motion to approve the
Sure,
contract.
whenever you'd like. Did you make that motion?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Thank you.
All right, so the differences between, so this is the current finance director's first
Term, per se?
term contract? I mean, she's
Yes.
had a contract, right?
So Carrie, it seems like she's been here for a very long time, but she's only been here for about 2.5 years. And this is one of the 3 positions that Mass General Law allows for an employment agreement.
And the differences that I see between the previous finance director's contract and this one, are there like particular reasons for the differences? Not the pay.
Sure. So the previous finance director's contract was first negotiated when she began her employment in 2010. And she has since retired, obviously. And similar to both the chief contracts, I haven't done a restructuring while someone's in that position because that was the terms or the terms of agreement that they first agreed to when they were employed. With the finance director, director of finance, we were able to capture, one is a review of the job description and the compensation plan that we had the Collins Center perform, and also review other towns that had directors of finance, what their agreements were. So this was the agreement that was presented to Ms. Mazzarell when she was offered the position.
And the, so two differences I'm curious about, and I assume Ms. Mazzarell is supportive of the contract. On page 3, number 17, indemnification, it's very different in the current contract as opposed to the one in the previous one. Seems the indemnification appears to be broader to me. Is there like a, is that, maybe this is a standard one? And
So, again, I'm town council at the time, back in 2010, probably reviewed that contract with my predecessor, and we had Labor Council review the language in this contract before it was presented.
the, I mean, the first part is something to take note of, and it says in the previous contract, the employer shall defend, save harmless, and indemnify the employee against any tort, professional liability claim, or other legal action, whether groundless or otherwise, arising out of an alleged act of omission occurring during the performance of the employee's duties. But that isn't exactly what it says in this proposed contract. Is that just something Mr. Tallerman didn't think was necessary?
It wasn't Tallerman, it was
this
town
is-
council Clifford and Kenny
Oh, okay.
who reviewed it, so.
Is this the same, if I could interject, is this the same language that was in the fire chief's contract? I don't remember because I didn't compare it, that we approved last week.
I have to review it.
Kathy, can you pull that up?
Part of the procedural question I was going to comment on was typically the board, for instance, in collective bargaining agreements, has the opportunity to meet and discuss, what they want to see in a contract, and then the town manager appropriately contained in the charter negotiates that. So we seem to be doing a different process here, and I don't know why that is. But while you're thinking of that, is there a reason? Because I think you said something when Justin was before us at the previous meeting, that this contract is being done 7 months prior to the expiration. Is that a budgetary issue?
It is a budgetary issue, so, and then also if for some reason either party wanted to terminate, there's language in there that provides notification. I have no intention of terminating the agreement, but I am going to put out a budget for FY '27 come mid-January.
And you want to contain this, so that's why,
Yes.
I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but that's why we're doing this 7 months ahead of time.
Yes, but I think appropriately, it should be done this far in advance, no matter what, for any contract that's going to expire. But yes, the funding, the recommendation that I have in here is to insert the amount into the FY 2027 budget for July 1st, 2026.
Okay. I was just comparing it with the previous one, which wasn't 7 months. It was March, April, it was like 2. And the other thing I noticed it's really the only thing I have to, well, the previous contract with the finance director and the other, I don't know about the fire chiefs, the other staff is, so they're paid for a certain amount of unused sick time if they leave, but that has been dropped in this one? Is that here, or I didn't see it?
Yeah, employees hired after 2013, there's no cash value for their sick leave.
Their unused sick leave?
And yes,
Yeah. And that's with both the all the contractual and the union employees?
including my contract.
Well, you just didn't negotiate that one. You should have me negotiate that for you,
I
Jeff.
will.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
Kathy, did you find that indemnification provision? Would you like to read it, please?
Certainly. It was Clause 18, indemnification for professional liability. The chief shall be indemnified by the town for claims made against him arising out of conduct within the scope of his employment. The town agrees that it shall defend, save harmless, and indemnify the chief against any tort, professional liability claim, or demand or other civil or criminal legal action, whether groundless or otherwise, arising out of an alleged act or omission occurring in the performance of the chief's duties as fire chief of the town, so long as the chief is acting within the scope of his authority as fire chief.
Now, did that come from the same law firm? Do we know?
I don't know, but to move this along, if the board wants me to review the indemnification to provide the employee more protection, I'm happy to meet with.
Just hearing what Kathy read, I like that one better. If I'm an employee, I like it better than this one. This was very, very generic. So, I mean, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Yeah,
I like that language better as well, and I think we ought to suggest that it be substituted in this.
we could do that tonight. Was that reviewed?
Carrie, are you amenable to that?
Was that reviewed with council?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure Carrie is. It's more proper
Maybe there were
protection
two.
in keeping with the other contracts.
It is. It's better language, I think.
And as far as the process, Stuart, we owe it to you to bringing this to our attention, that we should be approving these. The charter says we approve them. It doesn't say how we do that. And if the board wanted to, we could take these into executive session and discuss them as we do with union contracts and do that. But that's what.
Yeah, and that would be my recommendation, but for the
Going
next,
forward.
going forward, I
Okay.
don't want to upset the.
Also, as far as the timing, isn't the intent here to try to put the chief's contract and the finance director's contract on the cycle with the fiscal year, beginning of the fiscal year? Wasn't that your intention?
Yes, but they're not in sync with each other, but they are based on the fiscal year.
Does Carrie's current contract expire when? Now?
It'll be June 30th, 2026.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to ask Kathy to read that language one more time before we take a vote.
Indemnification for professional liability. The chief shall be indemnified by the town for claims made against him arising out of conduct within the scope of his employment. The town agrees that it shall defend, save harmless, and indemnify the chief against any tort, professional liability claim or demand, or other civil or criminal legal action, whether groundless or otherwise, arising out of an alleged act or omission occurring in the performance of the chief's duties as fire chief of the town, so long as the chief is acting within the scope of his authority as fire chief.
I like that.
Me too.
Okay. Carrie, did you want to say something, or did you want to wait until we took a vote? But you're okay with this? Okay, we have a motion that Stuart made to approve this contract for the finance director, and it's been seconded. Any further discussion?
Well, only with
wanna
that,
add-
with that
With that
change.
amendment, with
Yeah,
that amendment.
With that amendment.
Right, okay. All right, I'll call the roll. Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dyken?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Carrie?
Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it. I look forward to continuing working for the town of Chatham and to continue my efforts and work with my team. The past few years have been challenging for me. It's stepping into a new role and a new community. I've learned a lot over the past couple years. I'd like to thank the town manager for her support and her guidance, and my teammates as well. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Carrie.
Who's never in doubt?
I think I speak for the board. I think you've done an outstanding job. I remember when you were, I won't say interviewed because that's not the charter term, but we were all given the opportunity to meet with you. And I had a conversation with, at the time, with our former chair, Mike Schell, and he made the observation, which I shared, that, and I don't know if the public is aware of this, that Carrie started out at a very junior level in the finance, in municipal finance, and continued to progress upward in terms of responsibilities, and I think we both thought you were an ideal candidate for this job, and I know you worked very closely and well with the Finance Committee as well, so
Yes.
congratulations, and we look forward to your continued good work for the town.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, last item is to consider committee appointments, and we have two appointments for the Historic Business District Commission. We received a communication from Chair Dan Silver, who asked that he himself be changed in status from full member to an alternate member. I think the commission has 3 alternate positions, only one of which is filled
Yeah.
by Tim Gilmore, and he recommends that Tim Gilmore be elevated to the full member position. And if we make these appointments tonight, we would expect that the HBDC will reorganize and vote for a new chair formally and a vice chair and a clerk. So the first, I'm going to turn to Shireen. The first, there are 2 motions proposed. One is relative to Mr. Silver. So Shireen, do you want to take that one?
I will in just a moment. I just wanted to say thank you to Dan for his service
Amazing
as
job.
chair. He's been a wonderful, valuable member of the HBDC for a number of years. I really have a lot of faith that Mr. Gilmore will carry through. He's a very active alternative.
Yes.
Also, it's my understanding the acting chair right now is thinking about, after the first of the year, reorganizing the board.
Good.
In that, I move to appoint Daniel Silver as an alternate member of the Historic Business District Commission through June 30th, 2026, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second?
Moved and seconded. I'll call the roll. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Mr. Chair, I move to appoint Timothy Gilmore as a full member of the Historic Business District Commission through June 30th, 2026, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second?
Moved and seconded, and call the roll. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. One more motion for tonight.
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved and seconded, call the roll. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned at 7:17 PM. Good night, Chatham.